Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Night was falling on Manhattan, bathing the skyscrapers in a golden light that reflected off the damp asphalt after a light rain. The flickering neon lights of Wall Street shops illuminated the crowded sidewalks, where the hurried crowd walked without looking up. Among them, a frail, dirty figure moved slowly forward, carrying only a plastic bag. His clothes were torn, his shoes full of holes, but his eyes shone with an intensity that nothing could dim. This girl, ignored by passers-by, knew every corner of the streets, every glance hidden behind a polite smile. The hurried faces, the impeccable suits, the luxury cars, nothing escaped her notice. In this world of wealth and power, she saw what others refused to see, the hidden fear, the silent greed, the traps ready to close on the unwary. That evening, the air was thick with unusual tension. A colossal contract, worth billions of dollars, was to be signed in Manhattan's most luxurious hotel. Alexander Whitman, a respected and feared millionaire, walked toward the atrium, surrounded by his assistants and lawyers. His mind calculated every move, every word, every potential obstacle. He believed he was in complete control. But in the shadows, she waited for him. Her eyes fixed on his silhouette, immediately recognizing the unseen danger. She knew this contract wasn't what it seemed. Behind the glittering clauses and golden signatures lurked a trap capable of destroying not only Whitman's fortune, but also his reputation and his freedom. And she, a homeless girl, alone against the world, would be the last warning he would receive before he fell. The cold wind made her hair float in disarray, and she murmured to herself, "If only he would listen to me." No one saw her, no one heard her, except fate, which had just placed their paths on an inevitable collision. Alexander Whitman walked confidently down the Waldorf lobby, surrounded by his lawyers and assistants, his gaze fixed on the contract that would seal a multi-billion-dollar deal. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, red carpets muffled the sound of his footsteps, and the subtle scent of precious woods hung in the air. Everything was perfectly orchestrated, or so he thought. Suddenly, a high-pitched voice cut through the hubbub of the hall. "Don't sign. It's a trap." Whitman stopped abruptly. He scanned the atrium and spotted a young girl, dirty, thin, with tangled hair and tattered clothes. Her face was marked by fatigue and hunger, but her eyes shone with a strange, almost supernatural intensity. The guards rushed towards her, ready to expel her, but Whitman made a sharp gesture. "Wait." He approached slowly, intrigued. "Who are you to give me such warnings?" he asked, in a tone that mixed curiosity and skepticism. "I see what you don't see," the girl replied confidently. "If you sign this contract, you won't just lose money, you'll lose your freedom, your honor, your empire could collapse." Whitman, used to being in control of every situation, felt a shiver run down his spine. He raised an eyebrow, half amused, half irritated. "A homeless girl is warning me about a trap my lawyers don't see," he muttered to himself. But he couldn't ignore the girl's gaze. There was a lucidity in her eyes that even the financial experts he'd known for years didn't possess. A disturbing certainty, sharp as a blade. "Show me what you know," Whitman asked, after a moment of silence. The girl nodded and, with a quick step despite her thinness, led him to a quiet corner of the hall. "Look here," she said, pointing to a series of clauses in the contract that Alexander had barely glanced at. "These partners you think you can trust, they have hidden agendas. And this subtly worded section will trap you in a legal snare that even your lawyers won't be able to undo." Whitman peered through the pages. The details she revealed were precise, disturbing. Her lawyers, until then confident, exchanged worried glances. Every word spoken by the young woman unveiled invisible risks, unsuspected threats. How do you know all this?" asked Whitman, both astonished and suspicious. "Because I see what others refuse to see," she replied calmly. "And you, Mr. Whitman, are about to fall into a trap that no one can fix." Alexander, struck by the accuracy of her warnings, felt for the first time in years the weight of uncertainty. This girl, whom he would have ignored under any other circumstances, had just turned his perfectly calculated world upside down. Fate had just placed their paths on an inevitable collision, and Whitman would have to decide, ignore it and sign the contract, or listen to the one everyone had forgotten. After their first meeting, Whitman led the young woman to a small private room in the hotel, away from the crowds and prying eyes. The walls were covered in dark wood paneling and paintings depicting prosperous landscapes, symbols of power and wealth. Despite this luxurious setting, Whitman felt his mind gripped by an unusual tension. The girl sat down on the floor, crossing her dirty, tired legs, and took out a worn notebook she always carried with her. "Look here," she said, handing him the yellowed pages. She had drawn notes and diagrams that revealed the hidden connections between the contract's partners. Whitman narrowed his eyes. "You've actually studied all of this?" he asked, somewhere between disbelief and fascination. "Yes," she replied. "These men you think are honest, they have secret agendas. This clause in this contract, for example, binds you to legal obligations that no one has explained to you. If you sign, you will never be able to challenge certain investments, and you will be financially and legally trapped." Whitman's lead attorney, Gregory, intervened, his tone suspicious. "Mr. Whitman, it's obvious that this girl—" "Be quiet," Whitman interrupted. His eyes were fixed on the notebook. Every detail corresponded to the information he had received, but with a precision and foresight that no one in his circle had been able to anticipate. The girl continued, unperturbed, "And this partner here, he's already betrayed his associates in a similar contract. They manipulate you with promises of quick profits, but you don't see that they're making sure that if something goes wrong, you're the one who will bear the brunt." Whitman felt a chill run through him. His negotiator's instinct screamed at him to check every word, and yet, everything this girl was saying seemed true. Her audacity, her knowledge, and her lucidity surpassed anything he knew. Why me?" he finally asked. "Why warn me when you have nothing to gain?" She looked up, and for the first time, her face showed a mixture of sadness and determination. "Because I see injustice before it strikes. And you, Mr. Whitman, are about to be trapped, just like others before you." Whitman took a deep breath. He had spent his life studying risks, manipulating numbers, anticipating the moves of others. But this girl saw what even the best financial minds had never noticed. He then understood something essential. Sometimes, the most important truths come from those the world ignores, from those we believe to be voiceless. And tonight, this homeless girl had just saved his career, his empire, and perhaps even his freedom. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with tension. Whitman knew he had to make a crucial decision. He could ignore the warning and sign the contract, or heed this unexpected voice and avoid the invisible trap. For the first time in years, the businessman felt that his life hung by a thread, and that this thread depended on a child everyone had forgotten. The next morning, Whitman returned to the hotel's private office, this time accompanied by all his lawyers and assistants. The young girl, still dressed in her worn clothes, sat calmly on a chair, her notebook open on her lap. The atmosphere was strange. The imposing luxury of the sitting room contrasted sharply with the simplicity and determination of this child whom no one ever took seriously. Whitman took a deep breath and addressed his lawyers. "Listen. What this girl showed us yesterday could very well be true. I want you to check every clause, every partner, every document." The lawyers exchanged skeptical glances, but they began to examine the contract in detail. Soon, the evidence became clear. The girl had been right about almost everything. Invisible clauses, hidden obligations, partners who had already betrayed other investors. Each revelation corresponded exactly to what she had predicted. Gregory, the lead attorney, approached, pale and bewildered. "It's impossible. Everything you said is correct. We completely missed those details." The young woman shrugged. "Because you're looking at what you want to see, not what's actually there. You're relying on appearances and numbers. But the traps are always hidden in the details that no one reads." Whitman, silent, turned the pages of the notebook. Each annotation, each line, each symbol had strategic significance. He then understood the magnitude of the danger he had almost ignored. His hand trembled slightly as he closed the contract. "Who are you really?" he asked, his voice filled with a mixture of respect and curiosity. The girl smiled slightly, without arrogance. "I'm just someone the world has forgotten. But I see truths that others refuse to see. What you have before you is not a normal contract, it's a trap designed to make you fade into oblivion, to make your empire crumble silently." Whitman sat up, a mixture of relief and admiration crossing his face. "You saved me," he murmured. "You saved me from a catastrophe that even my lawyers couldn't have detected." The young girl looked him straight in the eyes. "Don't just believe me. Check, compare, think. But remember, sometimes, those we ignore are the only ones who see the truth." The lawyers, still in shock, began to reassess all strategies. Whitman, however, realized that this child was not only intelligent, she possessed a strategic perception and foresight that even the elites envy. And in that silent moment, filled with tension and mutual respect, Whitman knew he could never forget that encounter. He had just grasped an essential truth: power does not always reside in money, luxury, or titles. Sometimes, it resides in the watchful eye of those we believe to be invisible. Fate had just placed this young girl in his path, and Whitman understood that her warning had changed the course of his life forever. Whitman remained silent for a long moment, holding the contract in his hands. The tension in the room was almost palpable. His lawyers awaited his verdict, their eyes fixed on him, while the young woman, calm and resolute, observed every movement. Finally, Alexander Whitman placed the document on the table and declared firmly, "We are not going to sign." A murmur rippled through the room. The lawyers, still in shock, exchanged perplexed glances. "But, Mr. Whitman, the investors," Gregory began. "It doesn't matter," Whitman replied, his gaze fixed on the young woman. "I will not risk my empire, my reputation, and my freedom for a rigged contract. This time, I have chosen to listen to someone the world ignores." The young girl gave a faint, almost imperceptible smile, but one filled with satisfaction. She knew that this simple act had just changed the destiny of one of the most powerful men in the city. Whitman turned to her. "You saved my career, and more. What do you want in return?" She shook her head, her eyes shining with determination and independence. "Nothing for me. But remember, always look behind the mask. Those who seem honest aren't always." Yet Whitman felt he had to do something. He couldn't let this bright and insightful young woman sink into oblivion and poverty. So he decided to invite her to join his foundation. An education, resources, a future she could never have imagined. In the following weeks, the girl began a slow but profound transformation. Clean clothes, access to books and classes, and above all, the opportunity to develop her strategic intelligence. Whitman guided her, impressed by her quick learning and insight. Gradually, the young woman became much more than just a whistleblower. She transformed into a valuable advisor, capable of detecting financial traps and hidden intentions that no one else could see. Her past as a homeless person was forgotten, replaced by a strength and wisdom that inspired even the most powerful figures on Wall Street. And one evening, as Manhattan glittered under the night lights, Whitman turned to her and said, "You saved me, but in reality, you saved far more than me. You reminded this world that true power sometimes resides in those we believe to be invisible." She smiled, finally at peace. The world would never forget her. Fate, unpredictable and mysterious, had chosen an unexpected path. The girl everyone ignored had changed the life of a millionaire, and in changing her own, she had proven that even in the shadows, some brilliance shines brighter than gold.